Hello everyone and welcome back to another Unreal Multiplayer Action RPG tutorial series. In this video I will show you how to do multiplayer ranged bow and arrow combat, and of course you will be able to use the system for any type of ranged combat with projectiles first and foremost. With guns you pretty much usually don't need projectiles, but yeah, you're free to expand upon it. I will just show you how it's done and how it looks. So this is what we got so far. Just full screen. So we got our bow and arrow, river, enemies, as you can see. So when I right click, I zoom in. Fire an arrow. As you can see. And also we got our aim offset, as you can see. So we can aim. I think it's looking pretty good, and I'm starting to get happy about where the game is, and things like that. And also you can use the aim function for other stuff as well. I'm using it right now for slash attack, which is, yeah, it's not finished. It's not really working properly with the attack. You get the you can use it for other stuff as well. So yeah, it's funny. So I like when I play, I get stuck in doing it because it's fun. So yeah, let me show you how I did it. I don't need this. So first and foremost, I made a new graph called ranged graph, and in this, here is where we're handling like most of the logic. We also have some logic for the aim offset, which is basically just me rotating the bow. But yeah, the zoom is done by the right mouse button. When it's pressed, we zoom. When it's released, we zoom out. And the first thing is just basically me checking if I can aim or not. I do it with it's just a macro checking everything if I can aim. So it's just checking that I'm not blocking and I'm not already aiming and I'm not in a dodge roll, I'm not attacking and things like that. So that's the first thing. And I also check if I'm using a bow, because the way that I aim might be different between different weapons. So this time I'm using a bow, and as you noticed, I also have another function for a greatsword, but this time we're going through the bow. And then I just made a bool called isAiming. It's not replicated or anything, it's just to know in the future if I'm aiming. As you can see, and this is where the function, I set it to true here, so the next time I do the function I will check if I'm already aiming or not. So it's just generally good to know if you are aiming or not. Then we have the main aim function. This is just the animation pretty much. So the only thing in this function is that it's server aim and MC aim. So this is run on the server, which is reliable, and this is a multicast that is reliable. As always, if you're doing a huge multiplayer game, you probably don't want to have these on reliable, but since I'm just doing a small co-op game, it's fine. Yeah, so on the multicast I just play the animation, and as you can see the animation is fed through the server and through the multicast. I will show you this later. This is for the bone rotating. So this is super simple, and the same with the stop aim. So this is super simple, and the animation I have here, because I want to be able to change this one, so I will probably do this to a variable later, because the animation for aiming might be different for different like types of ranged weapons. This is a bow, I might have a crossbow, and then I might have rifle or something, so the animations will be different. So I will be able to set this animation here. And yeah, so basically I would probably have like a aim animation here, and I would just drag it there, so I would get it from the weapon that I'm using. Perfect. That's the first part, the animation. As you noticed, I am also, when I aim, I'm also getting a crosshair on the screen. Not sure how good it's shown, but I'm also getting a crosshair on the screen, which means that we need to have a crosshair. So hopefully that's like the basic of the basic. So hopefully you already know how to do that, but I will show you anyway. There is my HUD. Here it is. So as you can see, it's just an image of a crosshair that I'm using, and I have a shitload of crosshairs that I'm tested out, kind of like this one, and just set it to visible. So the visibility is on default, it's hidden. So it's basically just a part, and make sure it's a variable so that you can access it. And then back again on the player montage, we just, or in the range graph, in the range graph, we just grab the main UI, which is a variable that I set on the begin play. So as you can see here, on the begin play, I create my HUD widget and I set the variable main UI. So now I can access it from the range graph. I just grab the variable main UI, and from there I access the crosshair. So just get crosshair, and that's what I'm calling it here, as you can see, crosshair. So now we're accessing this part. We're setting the visibility to true. Awesome. And now comes the interesting part. So for the zoom, I'm using two different spring arms. So one spring arm normal, one spring arm ADS. So the reason I'm doing this is to get this smooth zoom, as you can see. So to get this smooth zoom, so let's see, let's go to the report. As you can see, so basically this is the normal spring arm. Here you have my settings for the normal spring arm, length and everything if you want to copy it. And the ADS one, as you can see, it's a lot shorter, but it's using pretty much the same things otherwise. So it's just zoomed in basically. You can obviously like do the offset a little bit more to the right and whatever, however you want to do it. I haven't exactly lined it up to the crosshair, to be honest. So it looks like if I weren't using a crosshair, as you can see, it's almost easier to aim just by looking at where the arrow is. So as you can see, the crosshair is way off, but the arrow is hitting. That's like a major problem with crosshairs in general, but I could line it up a little bit better. So anyway, it's just a smaller arm length. You could obviously just set the length of the spring arm as well. Range graph. But the reason I'm not setting the arm length is, if you set the arm length, you would need to lerp it, I think, to get it to go smoothly. And this move component 2 function has over time, so it's way easier to just attach the camera from the normal spring arm to the ADS spring arm instead. So the parent is the camera, and the spring arm is the parent is the spring arm, and the target is the camera. I keep the world locations and everything, and then we move. So we parent it to the spring arm ADS, and then we move it to the location of the spring arm ADS. We check is in, is out, and I'm using over time 0.3. You can obviously do it quicker or slower if you want to. It's not really shown in the video very much, but I'm also using as you can see, this projectile mesh. I'm also like setting this projectile mesh. Sorry, I'm gonna go out and drink pretty soon, so I'm late. So I'm gonna meet up some friends and get drunk. They are waiting for me. So I just set this projectile mesh, which is another mesh I'm using. As you can see here, it's just parented to the normal mesh of the character. And it's nothing right now, so the default is nothing. But what I do is I set it to this arrow mesh. So here's a static mesh of an arrow. So whenever I'm aiming, I set the static mesh of the arrow mesh to this arrow. So I'm not sure you can see it, but all of a sudden I'm having an arrow there. You can almost see it. And the same way there, I attach it to the components. So the parent is the mesh. I snap this one to the target, and I'm using a socket called equip arrow. And the reason you do that is because you want it to be lined up. So if we look at the skeleton, aim, am I calling it that? Bow aim? Yeah, okay, let's just, it's not the right animation, this one, but, and I think I have equip arrow. So if I just add preview asset arrow 02, I think it was. Yeah, so there you go. So what you need to do is I'm adding a socket to the hand, right, called equip_arrow, then use the preview assets and the arrow and just align the socket. So as you can see, if the socket starts out like that or something, so you just need to rotate it so that it looks good like that. And then after that, there's a slight delay just for it to match up, and it's for the sound to be played, and the sound I'm using is this one. Just a random draw cue, and this one is using some random draw sounds. I'm having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 draw sounds connected to a random node with the output, so it won't be exactly the same sound every time I draw the arrow. Then a slight delay again, and after that, maybe this is too much, 0.3. I set everything ready so that while I'm doing the aim animation, I can't like dodge roll and things like that, because I'm checking if I'm aiming with this one before I dodge roll. And then I set everything ready. So yeah, you can do this. Obviously you will have to customize this a little bit, but you can copy most of it. So that's everything for the aiming. And then when I release the mouse button, if aiming is true, which I set to true here, we do the server stop aim. And the server stop aim is basically this one but reversed. So stop anim montage. And the anim montage that we're stopping is the same one that we're starting here. So it's still the same one. So that makes us stop that animation montage. And we set the aim alpha to 0, which is for the bone rotation, which I'm going to show you pretty soon. So that's basically it. And obviously we also need to turn the Aimable to false, and we need to remove everything. So basically we just reverse this. So we set the visibility of the crosshair to hidden. We set the projectile mesh, which is the arrow, to nothing again, so the arrow just disappears. We reverse this, so we set the follow camera back to the normal spring arm, and we attach it. Easy in, easy out, over 0.3 seconds. So that's everything for the aiming. So what should we do now? Let's do the rotation last. So for this part we need to do the fire function. So on the left mouse button I check if I am aiming. So this is the fire. So if I'm pressing the left mouse button, because normally when I press the left mouse button, you can see we are doing attacks, but whenever I'm having an arrow, I press the left button and I'm firing an arrow instead. So so this is just to check. So if we are using the fire button and we are aiming and we are having a bow equipped, we will set the static mesh of the projectile mesh to nothing because we are firing the arrow, so the arrow needs to disappear from our hand. And then we do a little sequence. So fire part is from here, and the other part will go back to the aim because we don't abort our aiming just because we fire an arrow. Now this part is hard. I stole this part from another guy on YouTube. I will link his tutorials in the description because he taught me a lot with his tutorials. He's way better than me, so you should watch his tutorials for multiplayer third-person shooters. But I'm using this. I stole this pretty much from him. You can ignore this. So what we need to do is we need to decide where we are firing. So we do that by grabbing our follow camera. So we need to first we need to make a line trace even though we are firing a arrow, because we need to know where we are firing the arrow. So with this line trace we get the follow camera, get world rotation, and get world location, and get the forward vector. You times the forward vector of the follow camera by 10,000, so that's how far the line trace will go. So it's just a really large number, could be anything, but I'm using 10,000 and it's working fine. Then we add the world location to this vector, so vector plus vector, and that's going to be the end location of the line trace, and the start is just going to be the location of the follow camera. So the line trace is firing from the camera. So let me show you how that looks. So as you can see, there's a trace going. I'm not sure if you can see. So whenever I fire, this trace will be shot. So what do I do next? If the line trace hits, we do some more stuff. Actually, I can remove this. Oops, sorry, because you did some stuff here. Actually, I want this for later when I do like normal, when I'm not using projectiles, so I'm gonna keep that. So if we are hitting something with the line trace, then we need to set this variable shoot to store that variable basically, and that's going to be the transform. The reason we need this is because the transform that we're setting here is going to be the transform that our projectile is spawning into. So if it's true, or what you need to do is, before you check if this is true, get the socket location from where the weapon is firing from. So you need that. So in my bow mesh, as you can see here, in my bow mesh I have a socket. So just socket manager, create socket. I'm calling mine muscle from when I did a third person random normal shooter, not fantasy. So I'm just used to having the muscle one. You can name it whatever, but muscle makes sense. So from the muscle socket, and also you want to break your hit from the line trace, because we're going to use the information from the hit actor and the impact point of this one. So, and this is a bit annoying, so I know there's lots of lines going everywhere, so this probably looks super confusing. Hit me up in the comments always if there's some problem. So I'm just gonna have this screen static here for a little while and try to zoom in so that you can see how it looks. So from the get socket rotation, drag from it and get find look at rotation. And this is gonna be the start. So connect the socket location to start, and the target is gonna be this one again. So where the line trace is going. So drag from this one back to the target down there. So that's the first one. The second look at rotation. So from this one, get socket location again to the start, and this time impact point. So this is one we're gonna be using if it's a hit. Now from both of these ones, from this and this one, you need to make transform. So location will always be from the muscle socket, and the rotation will be find look at rotation from these two that we just made. You can ignore that. Perfect. And you can actually, yeah, that's it. All of this you can ignore if you're wondering why they're going lots of lines up. So now we need to set, actually I'm not entirely sure why we do this, but we do it and it's working. So from this transform, you need to create a variable called shoot2, which is a transform variable. And from the return output, you have the shoot2. So if, this is where this branch comes in. So if we return a hit, if that's true, we set the shoot2 to this one, which is basically the shoot2 will be the impact point of this one. But if we're not hitting, the shoot2 will be just this very long distance. So we set them, and then we go to the output and we pin this in. You can't like drag this one in here, because then you're not going to be able to do it with the both of these ones. So that's why we're setting them and using this one instead. So when we reach the output, it will be either this one and this one from this. Hope that makes sense. One more time. No, it's a lot of stuff here, but I think you will get it. Just let me know in the comments, otherwise I'll post an image or something. This was more complicated than I thought. 10 more minutes or something, then we're done. So that's for it for the shoot2. Then we have another function called server spawn projectile, and this is the function that is spawning the arrow. So from self, server spawn projectile. So this function is replicated on the server, and it's reliable. And from it we only use this spawn actor from class. So spawn actor from class. And you don't have a class yet, so I will show you the class pretty soon. For the spawn transform, just drag it in to create transform pin, and the owner and instigator. And then for the collision handling, always spawn but ignore collision. And then we call this function that we just made after the shoot2, and from the output shoot2 you connect to the spawn transform and just self for owner and instigator. Perfect. Now for the next part, you can't see because I changed my. Let's see. So, what can you see? Yeah, you can see it. Okay, great. Where is it? Where did I put it? Weapons, maybe. Range weapons. Perfect. So now you need to create a new actor. Let me just see if it's actually an actor. Yeah. So right click, blueprint class, actor, master, projectile. Master underscore projectile is what I'm calling it. So this is gonna be the master component for the arrows or whatever. So you're gonna need a few things. First is projectile movement. So add projectile movement. And this one is, whoops, sorry, doesn't really matter. On the master one it's 250, but it's gonna need to be a lot higher on the child items. So that's basically the projectile speed. And also I'm not using any gravity. Projectile gravity scale 0, so the arrow will go in a straight line because I'm not doing a super realistic shooter. But if you want to, you can obviously use gravity. So gravity will make the projectile fall. I have a static mesh, so the static mesh is the mesh of the projectile. Particle system, because I'm probably gonna use the same projectile for like spells, so for fireballs and things like that. I'm not using it right now, but yeah. You could obviously, like, if we do, I think there's some random spark or something. Let's add one. Don't we have a cool electric impact? Is that cool? Actually, I want something that's lasting. Yeah, okay, let's check if that works. So it's basically with your projectile. So as you can see, now it's a magic arrow. Yeah, it's lagging because it's compiled with shaders. I actually like this. This was pretty cool. I'm probably gonna use this. So it's a magic arrow now. So it's fine to add stuff to your particle system as well. And then we have a trace mesh. You can ignore this for now. Actually, it's like for speed lines and trace, like I'll show you pretty soon. And then there's the collision. This one is far too wide, so I'm just gonna set it down to 15 or something. So this is basically like the collision, because the arrow is not that. Because I was doing a fireball from the start, so I wanted it to be a bit bigger, but you can obviously just, it's smaller now anyway. So the collision is basically gonna be where we do damage. So on the begin play of this master, I get the instigator, and we know it's the instigator because we set it here. I cast to my player character and I just promote a variable, so the owning player is now, I get a reference to the owning player. So basically just collision on component begin overlap, we cast to our master enemy. If we are hitting a master enemy and the owning player is valid, which means we are not dead, because you can fire and then die. And yeah, maybe you want to do damage anyway. Yeah, I'm doing it like that. And then you, and if it is valid, I basically just destroy myself. I'm not sure why I call this destroy. Should probably be damage and destroy. Server damage and destroy. So this function. So what do we do from this one? We start by it's run on the server. It's reliable. We start by applying damage and just pin everything into the function, and the same with spawn emitter location. Spawn emitter is gonna be like blood and stuff like that. So same there, pin it in, and then we destroy self. So when we hit, we destroy the arrow. So now we got this function which all of these pins are in. The damaged actor is gonna be the master enemy. The base damage is gonna be the damage from my owning player that I got a reference to, equipped weapon, and damage. I'm probably gonna do, yeah, so it's the damage of the weapon, or player damage, or whatever you're doing. You can just set it manually like this as well, however much damage you want to, but I'm using this one. Instigator damage causer, it's just self, it's just the owning player. The emitter template is gonna be the hit particle of the master enemy. So if you haven't been following these tutorials before, all of my enemies have a variable that's called a hit particle, and that's because it's different for each one. Maybe skeletons aren't using blood, for instance, they use dust when they get hit, so it's different for all the enemies. And the location is going to be the location of the emitter, so it's just going to be where the arrow is at that point. So easy peasy. That's it for the master enemy or master projectile. Then I do a child projectile of the master, so just right click, create child blueprint, and this one doesn't have any functions because all the functions are in the master class or the logic. The only thing that we do is that we add the meshes and everything. So the collision is way too big, as I said before, it's 86. I'm gonna turn it down to something like that. I still want some error margin, something like that. So whenever this one hit, we do damage. I have my, as you see here, my arrow mesh, which is the static mesh, and this is why I use the trace mesh, as you can see. So it's basically just a mesh, but I can do it how long I want to, and it's just like semi-transparent material. You can do so when I fire. I'm not even sure it's as you can see, it's like creating small speed lines after the arrow. It's just a very easy way to create bullet tracing and arrow tracing. It's a bit too long, I notice now, because it spawned after, even after. Maybe I should wait a little bit. Yeah, you get the picture. So yeah, that's basically it. And this is the test arrow that we're spawning. As you can see, test arrow. Voila! That's most of the functions. We only got one tiny teeny little bit left. And the one tiny teeny little bit we have left is the ADS rotation of the bones. So to do that, it's actually very easy. Go into your animation blueprint, and in your animation graph, you need to add this transform modify bone. Transform modify bone. It's this one. You need to, let me see the settings. So for the translation and scale, they are both ignore, but the rotation is what we're manipulating. So the rotation should be add to existing, and component space is what I'm using. I tried out world space, but component space seemed to work. Promote rotation to a variable called aim rotation, and promote the alpha to a variable called aim alpha. And then you just connect it in, and it will create this local to component and local to component to local, and connect to the outputs. So the aim alpha is if so the rotation and the aim alpha basically is what we're gonna be using to set this. So you need to create two. Might have This is Unreal Engine. It's sometimes not. It might have actually. There we are. Perfect. I thought it was getting stuck. So you need to create 2 variables in your player character. Not this one. Aim alpha and aim rotation. Aim alpha is a float, and aim rotation is a rotator. In my event graph, you like this? This is my camera logic. It looks good. I'm gonna clean that up later. Crazy. Here we go. So on the mouse input, your axis is what you're using. So this is the standard one that comes with the third-person template. But if we are aiming, we also want to set the rotation. So if we are aiming, you set this one, set normal rotation, which we just made, split struct pin, so you get it like that, and then you get the control rotation of yourself, and so get control rotation, and the same here, split the struct pin, and then you just connect the pitch to the pitch. No, actually, I'm sorry, you don't do that. You get the pitch, and because you want to invert it, so you float times float, and the times is -1, as you can see, so because otherwise you will get inverted controls. And then you connect it to the roll. Yep, apparently. You connect it to the roll, and then you do this function, which is basically just a replicated function that is run on the server. So a custom event, run on server, reliable. Why do I set it here? So this is basically being set on the client here, and it's set on the server here. So that's why. I'm not sure. I think it needs to. Yeah, it needs to be set on the client as well. So that's why. So you do the same thing here. So in this function, just the roll, pin it through, and you drag it here into the function as well. So this one is this one. So you do this twice. Once this one is on the client, and this one on the server. And yeah, and if you also need to make sure that in your ranged ADS function, you set the on the aim you set the alpha to 1, and on the zoom out you set it on the stop aim you set it back to 0. So 0 means the rotation will be it's not gonna use any bone rotation, and when it's 1, it's gonna use the aim rotation variable. And there we go. I think that should be everything. Oh, I'm so happy. Yeah, this is it. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Also in another video. And also in the comments if you have any suggestions or what you'd like to see in the future. I'd like to see I'm planning to do like boss fights. That's one of the things I'm planning to do. And I think I should get into a spell system, but I'm not sure it's going to give you anything. My spell system is going to be way complicated. It's going to be very, very used for my own game, and it's not going to be like really useful for other people. So we will see. Oh, this dash is amazing. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or whatever. And yeah, see you in the next video. Bye.